So I'm curious about something. When you started as a podcast, and this was like way back now, what was the very first thing that you wanted to improve in your own podcast?
Probably not saying a million times. It was weird okay. Because I listened to my very first episode and I'm like, look, you can say it's not the radio. You don't have to be perfect. And I look back now and I just cringe. And there was that. And then I obsessed over the audio. And it was funny because for the longest time I was trying to get rid of the sound of the fan in my computer. And I'm in the room sitting next to the computer with the loud fan. And I had used noise gates and all these other little tools to kind of block out the background sound. And like an idiot, I would start off the show, like this is 2005. I'm like, hey, welcome to the show, blah, blah, blah. And I'd start off with an apology, which is like the worst way what a great first impression.
Of course. Yeah. They tell you not to grimace in a music performance, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, hey, I'm sorry about the fan noise and blah, blah. So finally, like I've been, trying to kill this thing for weeks. And finally somebody emailed me, said, Dave, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't hear the fan. I wish you just would move on. And it dawned on me that I would hit stop on the record and then I would hit play and I would go, I still hear the fan noise. It finally dawned on me. I'm sitting right next to the computer with the fan. It's like, it's in the room. Go listen to this someplace else, you idiot. So yeah, that was probably the biggest thing I was doing. But back then it was just so new and you were just amazed. The thing that really got me into it is I'd taken a blog for musicians about how to get more gigs and sell more CDs and things like that. And so it was called the Musician Cyber Cooler was my first podcast. And I put it out and I got a voicemail from a guy named Michael Van Laar from Nuremberg, Germany. And I just remember I get this voicemail and I hit play on it and I hear, hello, Dave, this is Michael Van Laar from Nuremberg, Germany. I'm in the basement of my brother's house. This is where I started. And that, which goes back to, it doesn't matter, just start. And my brother goes, did he say Nuremberg, Germany? And I go, yeah. And we just sat there for the longest time, just, hello, Dave. Hello, Dave. And I'm like, and I was just like, wow, there's somebody, I'm in the middle of Mogadore, Ohio, everyone together. Where? Yeah, exactly. It's me and the cows. And there's some guy on the other side of the planet that found my stuff. And I was like, okay, I hereby claim podcasting as my new jam. So
it's super cool. Yeah, it is very, very incredible when you can make connections with people all over the world. I've had people on my show from Australia, from Shanghai, from every place around the world, and it just never gets old.
Yeah. It's and they always sound like they're right next to you. That's the part that it's crazy.
Yeah. So cool what technology has been able to do for us. Sorry, I mentioned technology. Oh no.
I think you have to say it 3 times.
Okay, I've said it once.
Yeah.
We're just one. So speaking of all of this, was there a particular podcast episode that really stands out to you as one of the best ones that you ever did?
That I ever did?
Yeah.
Ooh, probably the one that my audience refers to the most is episode 400, which I'm kind of like, hey, I just did 900. Like, what? Nothing in the last 500 is no. Schoolofpodcasting.com/400. And because I do this every 100 episodes, I just take my format, throw it out the window, and you just never know what you're going to get. And so in that episode, I decided to have a fictional radio morning zoo crew. So it was Binky and the Wiz, and they came and took over my studio and threw me in a broom closet, and they're doing all the radio stuff. They're doing traffic and weather on the 10s. And I'm like, yeah, you don't have to do that in a podcast and that whole 9 yards. So everybody's like, when are you going to do more Binky and the Wiz? Well, they're all voiced by me. And Binky was like an exaggerated hoarse David Lee Roth kind of imitation. So Bink is more like, hey man, what's going on? kind of thing. And I can do that about 2 minutes. And then my voice is like, that's enough of that.
Yeah.
And then the Wiz was just the Martian from old Bugs Bunny commercial. So he talked like this, but I made him stutter because he's on the radio. And that would make sense to have a stuttering person on the radio.
Oh my goodness.
And everybody's like, when are you going to do more Binking the Wiz? I'm like, no. So although I did get points on episode 900. I just interviewed Jesus Christ came on. I got a hold of his agent, and we just wanted to talk marketing and his family business, and they did a little bit of a rebrand and that whole 9 yards. And that was I got kudos for creativity on that. They're like, that was because the whole point was I wanted to do it without being all, Jesus-y. And so it was just a marketing discussion on how he markets. And is it really true you only had 12 followers when you started? And they're like, yeah, but, that whole 9 yards. So
that is very clever.
Yeah. So Definitely. That was, but those are two that I've had people give feedback on. In terms of one that I remember, there's again, another OG. The guy's name is Dan Class, and the show is called The Bitterest Pill. And this was back in the day when people used to talk about people going postal, where people would just go into a building and just shoot it up. And often it was in post offices and things like that. And his uncle, unfortunately, had been killed from somebody going into a building and just shooting it up. And so you got the behind the scenes of what it's like when somebody, your uncle in this case, was killed in a mass shooting. You're just trying to grieve your uncle, and Channel 5 is trying to get the soundbite of the day. And that was definitely what I call a driveway moment, where I'm already home. I should be going in my house. And I'm like, no, I'm going to sit here and listen to the end of this. That was one that was just information you can't get anyplace else, super vulnerable, and just a great storyteller. And so that's one that if somebody goes, okay, I'm new to podcasting, what's an episode I should listen to? I'm like, here's something that's entertaining and tugs at your heartstrings and all sorts of things. So
sure. Yeah. It's nice to have those reference points just to know what you're shooting for,
Yeah.
No pun intended. But yeah. I've listened to a couple of your, what do you call them? Your critiques of podcasts as well.
Yeah. I have one called the Podcast Rodeo Show.
Yes.
That is that's just I have way too many podcasts, and a new media host had come out, and somebody said, well, what do you think of this? I'm like, well, I test these, and I'm like, I don't have time for another podcast. So I just made a show where I grab a random podcast, and as I listen to it, I kind of just go, okay, is the announcer voice ever going to come in here or whatever? Like I listened to one a couple of weeks ago, and they spent the first 8 minutes asking for money and kind of complaining that nobody was giving them money. And I'm like, probably because you haven't given them any value yet. I'm like, usually, it was just kind of, that was odd thing. But yeah, that's, it's something I just did, and I was going to stop it. It was supposed to be a test. And I kind of announced like, hey, thanks so much for listening. This was probably going to be the last episode. And a bunch of people said, no. You're saying everything else. You're saying the things that everybody else is thinking.
Sure.
And so I've been doing it for a while now.
Yeah, it's a great venue. And I really have enjoyed the shows that I've listened to. They're just because, like you do say things that people should be paying attention to, but maybe no one has been kind enough or outrageous enough to say it to their face.
Yeah, I try to be the early ones of those. I was, what's the word? Direct, shall we say. I was very direct. And now I try to do the whole, well, here's what I liked about it. And then here's like there was just a ton of intro music, and I would sit there and go, and the voiceover comes in. Okay, not yet. Okay. And the voiceover comes in. Okay. And then it would just stop.
Yeah.
So you've got this cool little, and you're waiting for it to fade out or something. And you're like, okay, that was a little abrupt. So, I try to be a little kindler, gentler version than the early shows. But, depending on what that person did to learn how to podcast or, what their background is, they may not know this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of us, when we start podcasting, we're just starting from nothing. We have nothing really to reference.